Well, we thought we would spend a little bit of time today talking about sports at St. Constantine, a little bit about where it's headed, and also some kind of foundational ways to think about it, what we think high school sports are really good for, what they're not good for, whether or not they should define your high school experience. You'll probably guess what we think about that. Or
yes!
or determine where we want to go to high school. So, yeah, Nick had this idea, so I'm going to make you talk first.
Oh, cool. Yeah, so I guess where I would start is, so in high school I kind of had like an interesting experience in that I was homeschooled, but then I also played sports at a local high school, a private high school. And I played football and I wrestled, and on the football team it was fun because I literally got to play every position, because on a good year we would have 30 kids on the team. That meant I got to play varsity starting at 10th grade, and I was also the left offensive tackle and a defensive end and special teams and pretty much anything else that we needed that night on game night. So on the one hand, I actually had a lot of fun because I just got to play all the time. Now, our best year, we won 4 games, and then our worst year, we won no games, and then the second best year, we won 2 games, and that was my senior year. So I don't come from a winning state championship type team. But that said, my experience both in football and in wrestling was one where first of all, by my senior year, if you had asked me my senior year, I would have told you I wanted to quit because I was burnt out. Because one of my primary experience during that time was one of just lots of pressure from my coaches, from my other teammates, to just do that one sport all year round. Which was kind of weird because I remember, as I was moving into high school, my dad was a big sports guy, and I just remember hearing him talk about he did wrestling, he did track, he did football, he did pole vaulting, just lots of random stuff in high school, because he just did not have that same kind of professionalization of the sport so early on. And then I got to high school. And I got on the football team, I was excited, and then the expectation was all right, season starts in June, and then it picks up again in February. And it was just this constant cycle of, that's not even true, because we never made it to playoffs. So our season would end in November, and then we were back in the weight room in December, and the expectation is that everyone would be there until, the official season picked up again. And then, I was also interested in wrestling at the time, and the wrestling season was right after the football season, and so there was this weird kind of unspoken thing with my teammates on the football team who didn't do wrestling, but they were doing football, and they're like, hey, where's Nick? Is he training still? Is he still on the team? And I was like, well, no, but I'm doing this other thing that I want to do, and So when I think of high school sports, that's my experience, and that's my experience that not even, as I said, not even as someone who was on this team that was really excelling. I have lots of great memories from it, and I think that this is the sort of thing that's really hard to do. And so I should also mention this was in California. So it was not as big of a high school football state as Texas is, which I have not even gotten my feet wet with that yet. But I know it's there. I've watched Friday Night Lights. You're
an expert.
Yeah.
Takes 3 out of 6.
Yeah. But I think that because that's the nature of sports right now, and it seems like it's getting, at least from what I can tell, it seems like it's getting worse and worse in the sense that it's getting younger and younger and younger, right? If your 8-year-old wants to play Little League, I played Little League as an 8-year-old, and I remember even then my parents being really adamant about, you are not getting on a travel team league, because that was becoming a thing right around the time that I was in Little League, and my parents saw how all-consuming that was going to be, and they wanted me to be able to do other things as well. Looking at the time, I was mad because I wanted to, be on the travel team. But I look back now and I realize, oh my God, gosh, yeah, that would have sucked so much of my time that I got to spend doing lots of other things that I really enjoyed. Everything from like piano lessons to, being involved with the church youth group or whatever. Things I wouldn't have otherwise had time for. And then the other perspective that I have on this is when I was first starting teaching, I was teaching at a very large private school in the Silicon Valley in San Jose. The sort of school where we had guys who were on like the 49ers or the San Jose Sharks teams, or they were like big wigs in Tesla or Facebook, or like they were sending their kids to this school kind of thing. So it was like very big and fancy. Felt very out of place. I was like driving in with my 1999 CRV, and like this 16-year-old is driving up in his brand new Tesla, and I was like, wait a second.
My dad owns Tesla.
Yeah, right.
That would make sense.
Hello, how many A's would you like this year? No, that's not what I did. But anyway, that particular school had a very good football team. They pride themselves on all of their sports accomplishments. And I taught 10th and 11th grade. I had a lot of those football players in those classes. And the one most frustrating thing to me as a teacher, especially of those particular students who I knew needed extra time, needed extra attention, needed the extra help, they were always being called out of my classes early because they had to travel, 3 hours to get to this game that's, down in LA, no, that would be like 6 hours, but they did do that too. And so what I saw there was like these students who did in fact need the extra time and needed the extra attention, weren't able to get it because they were constantly being called away out of my classes. And then they'd be gone for a weekend and they'd show up on Monday having done none of their homework because they spent most of their time traveling and doing their sports thing. All of that just seems unhealthy to me. And I think, as a school, we're trying to think and be very intentional about that sort of thing. And so, being relatively new, we're kind of in a unique place to be a little more thoughtful about okay, right, so how do we incorporate this? Because I have lots of good memories from my experience in sports. I think it ingrained a lot of good kind of just health habits in me. It also ingrained some bad ones as well. So there are lots of good things that come from sports. But there's a dark side to it, and it's one that I think is becoming more and more pronounced. Kind of the more things kind of go on. That I think as a school we want to be thoughtful about.
I think this brings up a really important question of what is important and good about high school sports. What do we want to build in the programs that we have, and what do we want to avoid because it's been so negative in our experiences?
Yeah, because I think I would say the other thing that we want to make sure that we are not doing is becoming the very sort of anemic classical school, private school, homeschool, co-op, whatever, that is treating all of its students as if they're brains in vats, right?
Yeah.
We are embodied beings that have bodies for a reason. We should be doing stuff with them. Sport ends up being the easiest way to get students to exercise without them hating it. I don't know why that works out that way. All my students are always can we play a game? And then we'll play the game and they'll run twice as much as they were when I was making them run, but they're laughing the whole time. I'm guys, you don't, okay, whatever.
Nobody laughs when they're running laps.
Yeah, but if they're chasing each other playing zombie, they're they love it. I'm you guys are doing the same thing. Right. But so I think there's a real sense in which we want to make sure that our students are having an embodied experience, that they're not just exercising their mind, right? They're not just exercising their character. They're exercising their bodies as well, because that's important to being a whole person. We want to be a whole person. It's been really fun actually. There's a mom at the school who runs a little powerlifting gym in her garage, And I go and work out there, and so does one of our 9th graders, and I see him there all the time. And it's always really funny because it'll be like, yo, no, this is great. We should definitely be doing this. But after this, you need to go do your homework. Because I know that you didn't do your homework. So you're done exercising your body, go exercise your brain. But I think that's really important because, yeah, there is totally that dark side. I have, like, you know, I don't know if you have a similar story. I at least have a similar story, too. I grew up playing travel ice hockey, and I couldn't do anything else with my life. And it was at a moment of, like, do I want to move to Minnesota to go to a boarding school so I can try to play in the pros? I was like 12 when we were making this decision. Or do we want to quit? And I was like, well, I think we're good. We're done.
No, it was the same. Like, weirdly, Kris and I are 2 Californians who played hockey.
Because it's the best sport.
Because it's the best. You're a goalie, I'm a center and a left wing, so we're enemies.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's that point where you have to decide, like, okay, I'm 15, going into 16 years old. I either have to completely change my life and move, like, especially because we were from California, it was like, well, you have to move up north somewhere and actually live with someone who's not your parents so you can be on this travel team and go all around, like Montana, Minnesota, Canada, and playing these games, right? But the same holds true if you're doing football, even in this state, because this state is so giant. You have to be constantly on the road if you're going to play at that competitive level. And so at this weirdly early age, we force young men and women to decide, like, are you going to prioritize this sport in a way that completely alters, you know, the next 3-4 years at least, but surely more than that, at crucial developmental periods. And yeah, it's wild. But there's also, I mean, so that's the danger of the dark side we were talking about. Random things that are good are just popping into my head. And one thing that sports are really good for, whatever level you play at, our culture tends to insulate young people from many, many things. And sports are a place where you have to learn to deal with losing, like actually losing. Because there's no, like, I mean, there can be, like, whatever trophy that goes to 2nd or 3rd place, whatever. But you know, even especially as a kid, like, you're not deceived. You know you didn't win. And learning to lose and move on is really important. And I think it's something that as a society, we don't teach our children to do very well at all. And if it can happen in sports, because it's bound to happen there, or at least learning, like, having to confront the fact that you really lost is bound to happen there. Now, learning to healthily move on depends on the culture of your particular team and your sport, the character of your coach, for sure. Yeah.
Be a goldfish. Sorry, that was a Ted Lasso reference. Yeah, I haven't seen that show.
Yeah, I was thinking about 2 things. I was thinking, one, there's a lot of high schools in this area, because high schools, especially in the suburbs, like we live in Sugar Land, I know some kids that I just interviewed that are at big high schools in Katy, where you've got 3,000 kids at a high school. There's many high schoolers that are moving towards, you can do one thing. So, like, if you try out for the basketball team, that's your thing. You can't try out for the play. And it's because
the classic high school musical dilemma.
I know, but no, it's because they don't have the resources to allow for 3,000 kids to do multiple things. But it also forces kids into these specializations. And I think one of those things we were talking about, like, high schoolers are longing for an identity and are often drawn to very shallow identities. So you can decide, I'm basketball, that's what I am, or I'm a theater kid. And that was one of the things I most wanted to avoid at this school. I tell this story a lot, I think I told it this morning. Last Christmas concert, not this one, but the one before, I looked up at the high school choir and saw every member of our men's basketball team in the choir. And I just thought it was really cool. They were required, like, because they have to take music, so they all chose to take choir. But you know what? They were there, and they were singing music that they could read from, like, written music, and they were singing in a different language. And I thought, that is really great. Like, and they were a good team too. That particular group was a good. They were all good basketball players, and they probably cared a lot more about being on the basketball team than they did about being in choir. But they could do both. And so I think we can like easily lose some of the great things about sports if they are overly professionalized. On the other hand, my own like junior high school experience was academics were very easy for me. I am introverted and independent. I like sitting and thinking about a thing for a long time, like reading books. So I was always really good at school. The thing that would have been the most healthy challenge for me was to have to work in a team. And have to work physically in a team. When I was 12 years old, I was exactly the height I am now. So you can imagine junior high was weird, and then high school was weird, and everyone got bigger than me, and I was still short. And suddenly I was short, and I used to be really tall compared to everyone. And so some of those like just more embodied and physical experiences where you have to work with people that maybe you think are not as smart as you, or you have to work with difficult personalities and you just want to kind of do your own thing, is really important, especially for academically gifted kids. It challenges them in other areas of their character. When school's really easy, you need that. Some of the kids who are good at sports, school's the hard thing, and sports are their break. And that's great too. They need both things available to them, I think. So pushing kids towards having this more well-rounded experience is important to us as a school. We want kids to be in the play and on the flag football team.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Competition. So, like right now, not having the sports, how do you implement competition? Because that's what I figure they gain from playing sports.
Yeah, and we see a lot of that with the house system at the school. Like, it sort of works the same way that you kind of get like an intramural competition versus like a like school versus school competition. So it's really funny. We have it ends up being a little sacrilegious, but there's one of our staff members, or faculty members, lives a few doors down from another family that sends their kids to the school, and their kids are all friends. And he came home from school one day to find that in the driveway of their on their driveway and sidewalk chalk was written like St. Helen sucks, or like stinks or something like that. I don't remember what it was. They're little, so it was probably stinks. But like, but so they immediately then ran into their dad, who is a house head for the House of St. Elizabeth. But the kids that did it were in St. Elizabeth, and asked, "Dad, how do you spell Elizabeth?" And he was like, "I don't want to tell you that." And they're like, "No, it's fine, it's fine." So and then they got chalk, ran over, and then they wrote it in and so there's this like really strong competitive streak that comes out, especially in the younger ones with the house competition. And it comes out a lot with the older ones too in the games that we play at field day. I don't know if any of you have ever seen a field day.
Oh man.
The nurse is on hand, and we believe in calculated risks, but I don't know if you've never seen a game of Kajava Can-Can, it is the single most competitive game that I think maybe exists. Yeah, it's the trash can in the middle with the rubber bands, but like all these kids, they're like fighting for their house, they're fighting for their own ego, they're fighting for the glory. Like last year we had a girl that literally like, I think she might have been concussed. I don't know, but I couldn't tell because she fell over, hit her own head on someone else's knee, but then got up and like amid tears refused to let go of the things. And was like, "No, we are finishing this game." And I was like, "Are you sure you're okay?" Yeah. We didn't know she was concussed, but I still kind of love it. Like, we didn't know she was concussed.
No, it was awesome.
If we had known she was concussed, we would not have continued. But like yes. I'm glad you're okay, girl that we didn't know was concussed. But so like. At this point, the rain was just pouring down in sheets. Like a bunch of the kids had run inside, but like these girls that are competing are like competing. And so like half of them are crying because they're exhausted, half of them are crying because apparently they've hurt themselves at some point during the thing and won't tell us. But they're all like, because they're all refusing to tell us, and they're all just in the rain doing this like epic Kajava Can-Can battle. And then the one girl that had the concussion, comes to find out, I didn't know this before, ends up like beating two other girls that were both on the same house against her that were trying to knock her out. And so she's like standing in the rain, like rockying, until then she immediately goes and sees the nurse. It's this amazing, like, there is this level of care that these students have about these kinds of games that like brings out this deep competitive fire. But because it's all within the context of like, this is why I love the house system so much, it's within the context of like, you have someone else in your grade that is in every other house of the school. So like, you can only like hate the other houses so much in the midst of competition. So it invites this like very strong competition that also maintains this parity that I think is necessary for good competition. And I think it ends up working out really, really well in that regard. So we definitely have that as a virtue here, but I do also think, like, I want to see as our sports develops, us be getting more competitive in that regard too.
With the sports we have right now, are we in the type of league? It feels like we're not yet. Like maybe we're just asking favors, like,
Yeah.
can you fit us in your
We're
schedule?
definitely competing with every other Orthodox classical school in the city.
So the reason that we've done relationship games so
Okay,
far,
that's good.
now flag football isn't a league, it's just,
We're in the life.
yeah, far
We're
from.
undefeated.
Yeah, hey!
Hey!
The organization that is sort of most well done and large in the state of Texas for schools like ours is the Texas Association of Private and Parochial Schools. Because of the size of our school, we would be in a certain division that would require hours and hours of travel. So that's mostly why we haven't done it, because you're paired with schools of similar size and similar athletic programs, and it would just, it's the entire state of Texas. And so we started the process of getting involved in it, and with our size school, we just thought this is untenable. So we've been working through relationship games, but as we grow, there's a lot more schools like in the next bracket. So that'll help it kind of bring down. And then we also need to, what helps about that too is leagues have really particular rules for like what grades could be involved, how long you can practice for, and because we're so small, like the junior high girls basketball team includes a fourth grader, right? Mary Margaret, who's really good, and it's great. Like it's awesome that she can play. But if we were in a league, we couldn't let her play. So because we're so small, as we grow, we'll have more kids in the right grade levels to field the full teams and be in a bracket that allows for more reasonable travel. I went to the first flag football game for the high school because I was like, I'm going. This is the new team. I'm going to do it. It was an hour and a half away, and so we like drove our tiny children all the way up there. And then we hung out for a little bit, and they were all like, "Yeah, I'm so tired," so we had to take them home. But it's just even with that, it's hard for parents to keep up. So as we grow, TAPS will be the league.
Okay. With the gym, I don't know
Yes.
how far that is. Just seeing like that would help so much because I think it's one of the biggest hindrances as parents is getting kids to practice, and it's with like Nate's doing basketball. It's 4 days a week, so there's 2 days a week, and you're having to drive to practice with other kids in the car, and you're doing and trying to figure out things. Also, just what that meant, like there was the last home game was in Quillian, but then when you're at the Mercy, it's like these kids have worked so hard, and then you come in and like you're on a 45-minute time limit. We're not going to stop. We have one ref. They're not calling any fouls. Kids are getting hurt. There's some more benefits than and then people actually came to the game and like cheered and like it was so cool, and it really I think it's so neat. Even if it's not, I don't think any of us are expecting that it's going to get crazy out of control when we're doing, but they work hard, and then the control of like when you get to pick the coach, like having Coach Check who is just praying over these kids and so kind and sweet. That's such an important moment, kind of like what you are here in the street, like that's an important thing, the fun person, but also the person that's pushing you and getting you to this level. So I think you'd see more kids playing. It's like Abby wanted to play basketball, but she didn't because there's only a handful of players.
Absolutely.
I think it's just maybe that sport, but I do think maybe a gym would help more people participate. And I think
I think a lot of parents said that one of the things why they didn't get involved is because they had other children, and that driving around was going to eat up all that time. And so you start making these tough decisions by not having a gym right here. And I think you're also going to bring a lot of parents together. Because I think with the volleyball team, like all of us parents, we loved being together, and it was so wonderful cheering out. And I'm happy to say they lost so well.
That's beautiful.
No problem at all. In fact, Coach Sam told me the first day, he said, "Oh dear, this team is really good." be prepared because after this game, they're all going to be crying. And I was really worried and I was praying throughout the whole game because I couldn't bear to see the girls crying. And they were beaten so badly. It was horrible. I kept telling them not to look at the score. And at the end of the game, they came running to us and they were so happy and they said, oh, where are we going to have our refreshments?
Free snow cone.
Yeah.
So I think we've got beautiful children. You know, their spirits are so well nourished and looked after here. It would just be so wonderful to give them something, you know, that they can actually, there's another element of where they can thrive.
Yeah.
And, you know, to be working alongside other teammates and learning new skills as real humans.
Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
PE when it's raining too.
And
Is-
do PE when it's
Is
raining.
the idea to build it where or is there a plan to build one?
There's a plan to build one.
Is it be like where the basketball court is now?
It will not.
No.
And I can't tell you more. Come to the gala in 2 weeks, and you will see all.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But truly, it's one of the top priorities for
Yeah.
the next 2 years.
Yes.
The gym, along with building out athletics department. So.
Now, my question is, are you guys planning to grow the teams that you have, or at the same time, offer different sports, like soccer, lakers, and
Oh man, both things. A lot of the students really want soccer. I have told them, like, that's a big team. Like, it's just a big team. We couldn't have done football until this year. We could barely field basketball just because kids are a little too scattered. And when you have, like, we have 25 high school boys, like, you have to get all of them. Every one of you has to play this sport.
And it's still not really big enough for a full football team.
So that's really just been the limitation. So the kids have been like really wanting soccer, and we are totally open to it. Soccer would be an easy one for us because it doesn't require tons of equipment or space. We just need to get bigger, and that is happening.
Yeah, I feel like there's a undercurrent that sometimes students will fall into where they believe that like we don't care about sports and that's why sports are the way they are. Man, we care so much. Like I am so like we had a consultant for like a capital campaign person a couple years ago that like literally they were when she was asking about things that we need, they were like call Kris. And I spent like an hour on the phone talking about how much we need a gym because of how important that is for like 9,000 different reasons. So like we are all 100% on board. We want to see teams grow. We want to see gyms. All of that stuff. Like we care a lot and definitely want it to be there. It's all just a matter of like population size growth for fielding teams and then just money for paying for buildings. It turns out buildings are like expensive. It's pretty dumb.
And we just keep needing more classrooms.
Yeah.
So that's what we've had to. Like,
and then the more people you get, like the more teachers you have to hire, and then you don't get more money. And if someone just wants to drop like I don't know, whatever, a gym from the sky onto our campus, we'll be so excited. It'll be the best thing in the world. You can get it named after yourself,
Come to
actually.
the gala and donate.
Yes,
To the gala.
there you
We'll
go.
keep taking it. We are working with an architect already. We already have someone like working on plans for the gym, and we are going for very functional and simple so that we can afford it. Like we're not doing showers, maybe a shower because of how muddy we are as people, but that's been a debate back and forth because we want it to be here and not
Soon.
distant future.
You mentioned growth a few times. Is 600 still, are we at
Yeah.
400 on our way to 600?
Yeah, so the easiest way to think about it is ideally we would have 3 sections of every grade level throughout the school, and we won't ever do more than that. So I'd keep messing up the numbers as what that actually looks like. It's somewhere between 5
For
and
high
6.
schoolers, then for a high school team, that would be whatever 15 times 12 is, would be your number of high schoolers
That's
to
too
potentially.
high. Who could calculate that?
Can we get more of the 7th grade going into 8th grade to shake up that class?
Yeah.
Can you put that into admissions?
Yeah, I know.
They need another
We
group.
talk about stuff like this all the time. Like,
We'll have 180 high schoolers.
Right. It's looking like we won't have a second section, which is a little surprising. We're gonna have like
Next year?
3 of 7, yeah, or
So
8.
next, two eighth grade.
I
What are you
think,
talking about? That's fine.
but we really want them to be 2, so we're trying to encourage that, but yeah. But I think 9th, like 8th going into 9th, maybe 3. So it's just weird. Some classes are like that. We every few years, like our current 9th grade is like this. They're just teeny, and kids leave the school for like reasons totally beyond anyone's control. Like 3 parents move away, and all their kids were in 9th grade. And you're like, why does this happen? Like to particular years. It's just so yeah. Our current 7th graders are one of those kind of smaller years.
I'm recruiting, so.
Yeah.
If we find kids for 7th, 8th grade,
Yeah,
when they,
so can
can
look
you
them up.
slide them in?
Yeah.
If they
Yeah.
go,
Yeah.
I know we're talking about sports,
Yeah.
but I love what you said about the basketball boys in
Yes.
the choir, and I think the choir is beautiful, and music theory
Yeah.
and all that. Is there a goal in the school also to make like a real kids orchestra and a band program
Yes.
extra, so that
So-
we can develop the whole valley?
Absolutely. We brought on Lauren Turner. You know, she's been our choir director for several years, but she's now full-time as the director of fine arts. And so she has already been working on programming for next year that includes more instrumentation classes. We're likely to bring in some new instrumental music teachers. And our current requirement right now is in high school you have to have at least two performative music classes, and then you can have 2 theory-ish ones if you want to. But it's a new requirement as of this year. And so we're hoping that will help orient children who don't want to sing towards band. So get some more people involved. One of our kids, who's a college freshman, took music history and theory 4 years in a row. And we're like, come on, you can sing in the choir. And he was like, I will never! And so we want to find an alternative for those who just can't bear the thought.
I didn't realize you did that.
Yeah,
That's
he
so
did.
funny.
He's very good at music theory.
Yeah.
But yes, come to the gala, or like shortly after the gala, we'll be announcing it to the whole community. And we hope very soon to have some of these things like in place. We've been really fortunate with how God has worked out ability to have the space to put a gym. So we're really excited about that.